Hello and welcome to a brief introduction to OpenRefine. Before we begin, we're going to need a couple pieces. First, type sites.mis.edu/metalab. Once there, locate the OpenRefine tab. In order for you to understand what's going to happen here, you need to download a tutorial here and the necessary dataset here. If you click on them, you'll be taken to Google to a preview, and you can download using the symbol up here. Let's close this. Before we open Refine, we need to make sure that Google Chrome is your default browser. Refine doesn't work well on Safari or Explorer. In order to make sure, go to Settings, and make sure that the bottom default browser says the default browser is currently Google Chrome. Okay. So the Google Refine logo is this diamond. Let's click on it. There we are. This is going to be Google Refine. It works off the Chrome suite, but it actually is offline, as you can see. Let's create a project. I'm going to choose a file. I know my file is called Refine, and it's on my desktop. So let's locate it. Here we are. And open it. Click Next. I prefer to always rename my file. So I would say Refine and the date, today being February 8th. Make sure that the columns are indeed separated by the correct separator, this being a CSV file, it should be commas. And click on Create Project. And there we go. This is going to be your product. Now you'll see you don't see the entire dataset, but it's actually there. You can show 10 rows, which is the current view, 25 rows, or 50 rows. 10 will be fine. Alright, let's begin editing our data. As I mentioned, I will be following the OpenRefine tutorial that you downloaded from the site. As you can see, one of the first good practices that I think is important is to make sure that before you transform any column, you delete trim leading or trailing white space. So that's going to be done by clicking Edit Cells, Common Transforms, Trim Leading and Trailing Whitespace. You can also do Common Transforms, Collapse Consecutive Whitespace. That means if there's two spaces in between words, it will collapse it down to one space. Okay. First, we're going to learn to cluster. So under Department, click on the arrow, come down to Facet, Text Facet, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cluster. The clustering function searches for similar words that are a little bit different and proposes a new variable. So we want this capitalized, so it'd be gstyle. We're going to ask it to merge, and same here for the GSIPM. Merge and recluster, and there's nothing else, so we can go ahead and close. And just like that, we have cleaned the entire department variable. Alright, now we're going to do some manual edits. Clustering allows you to do edits really quickly. However, there will be categories where you will have to make decisions on what you want your variables to look like. For example, under which category best describes your ethnicity, if we click on Facet and Text Facet, you see all these options. Now, you may need to reduce the variable into a small amount of categories. For example, Asian/Pacific Islander, you might just want to call it Asian. Black African American, you can edit and just call it African American. apply. Caucasian can stay as Caucasian. Did not want to specify, we can go ahead and keep that as a variable or just delete it. Euro-American, it's probably Caucasian. Half white, half Latino, we can call that mixed. Latino can stay. Mediterranean, Italian, that can be Caucasian. Middle Eastern, it can stay as Middle Eastern. Mixed. Native American, not willing to answer, which we can delete because it'll turn it into a blank. White non-Hispanic, that is Caucasian. Again, prefer not to answer. If we just delete it, it becomes a blank. And other, which I'm going to go ahead and say it's mixed, but you can delete it if you'd like. And there we go. We've reduced the variables within which category best describes your ethnicity. Okay, now we're going to learn to separate. Let's separate the address column into multiple bits so we can rearrange the order. So the end product that I want is going to be the street address with the state and the zip code. In order to do such, I first have to split the street address, the town, and the city with the zip code into 3 bits. So let's do exactly that. Address, edit column, split into several columns, and we're going to do it by separator. So here the separator that we're going to use is going to be a comma. However, that could be a dot, it could be a dash, it could be anything you'd like. But here we want it to be a comma. We're going to click OK. And as you can see, it divides the address into 3 columns. Address 1, which has only street address, address 2, which is just a town, and address 3, which is going to be the state with the zip code. As I mentioned, I wanted to create a new address using exclusively the street address and the state plus zip code. So let's do that. And we're going to go to Edit Column, Add Column based on this column. We're going to call it Final Address. And you'll see value, which is your street address. We're going to add, first we're going to need a comma and a space. And then we're going to type cells. Let's put address 3 in there because it contains the state and zip code. Space. And there we are. So the formula down here creates the final address. Let's click OK. And here we are. We have our final address. Next, we're going to edit person. Now, here we have the following format: first name and last name. However, I'd like for it to be last name first and then the first name. In order to do such, we're going to separate without using a pre-existing separator. So that means there'll be no comma, no period, or no dash. So we're going to do something a little bit different. Click on person, edit column, add column based on this column, and we're going to type the following: value dot split, open parentheses, open quotes, space. And here we're going to have a couple of things. So if I type 0, it would be the first name. And if I type 1, it would be the second name. In Google Refine, 0 will address the first word, and 1 will address the second word. If I had a third word, I would just put 2 in there, and it would isolate exclusively that word. So I want the last name first, so let's go ahead and call this new column last name. Click OK. We're going to do this one more time. Person, add column based on this column, value.split, open parentheses, telling it that it's a space, and now we want the first name, so it'd be a 0. We're going to call this first name. Now click OK. Now we have first name and last name. So in order to merge them, we're going to do what we did last time with final address. Click on last name, add column based on this column, and we have value, which is the column value. Add a comma and a space, and we're going to type again value, cells. In this case, it's going to be first name, dot value, and just like that. And we're going to call it name. And there we are. We have the name with the last name first and the first name second. Let's go ahead and delete these extra columns. So we're going to go to Edit Column, Remove Column. And again, Edit Column, Remove Column. I also want to rename it. I've changed my mind and I don't want the column to be called Name. So I go to Edit Column, Rename Column. I'm going to call it Legal Name. And click OK. There are multiple ways to do the same thing on OpenRefine. However, some are more time-consuming than others. In this next part, we're going to walk through a couple ways of cleaning a variable and showing you the added value of OpenRefine for cleaning large volumes of data quickly. So, on the question, how long have you lived in Monterey? If we put on a text facet, you can see that there are multiple types of values. We have text, we have numbers, we have months, we have about a year, we have multiple ways of recording the same thing. So there's a couple ways we can go ahead and clean that. We can hover over the variable, click Edit, and manually remove the text. And in this particular data set, that is not going to be very time consuming. However, you might not want to do this on larger data sets because this might take hours. So we're going to click out of your facet, and we're going to go back to your question, how long have you lived in the Monterey area? The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Edit Column, and we're going to go to Add Column based on this column. And we're going to do something we've done before in this tutorial. We're going to write value.split, open parentheses, open quotes, leave a space, and again, we're going to put 0 because we want to isolate the first value. I'm going to go ahead and name this. So in this case, we can call it number of years. And click OK. At this point, we're going to go ahead and take another facet, and we pretty much are just double checking that the cleaning came out right. So we have one that did not work. That's because of the way this was recorded. If you see, it says about a year, so when we divided the variables into pieces, it just took the variable about, the value about, really. So because we can see that it's about a year, I'm going to go ahead and manually edit this and just call it a year. Click Apply, takes out your facet, and remember to delete your previous column. And there we go. So we're almost done with cleaning your dataset. Now we're going to practice one more time some mixed cleaning. On the column, what is your yearly income for your household? we're going to start by putting a text facet and taking a look at what we're working with. So you'll see that we have some variables without decimals, some variables with decimals, some variables with and without dollar signs, some variables with a K, and some variables in text. The first thing we can do is use the cluster function. That'll save you a little bit of time. Click Select All, since we assume that the software is doing most of the heavy lifting for us, but do comb down through the material and just make sure that it's doing exactly what you'd like for it to do. So for example here, I would like the format to be separated by a comma, or I don't want for the time being the dollar sign. We will go ahead and re-add that later, so I'm going to delete those. So this looks alright to me, but I am going a little fast. You might want to take a little bit more time. So we're going to click Merge Selected and Close, and that should have done quite a bit of work. At this point, we're going to manually edit out the dollar sign since there's 4 variables with it, and this one has decimals, so let's edit those. One of the things that we can see in these variables is that when they were input with some trailing and leading space. So we have a fix for that. So if we go back to the column and you go to Edit Cells, Common Transforms, we can trim leading and trailing white space. And as you can see, that white space gone. We can do this one more time to collapse consecutive white space, spaces that might have happened if somebody tapped the space bars twice. Okay, we're going to back to our editing and remove the dollar signs. And let's just comb down through our variables and make sure that they're all in the format that we want. So get rid of those decimals. To that K, we're going to go ahead and delete the K and add 3 zeros. Let's go down. This process is not as time-consuming as it would be if you were having to edit this on Excel, and it actually makes the work significantly easier. Let's delete that. Almost done. So the last thing I want to do, but you may not have to do this, is I would like to consolidate all these answers into blanks. So when I look at my data, I don't want to see whether they didn't want to answer, they didn't know, it was not available, prefer not to answer, refuse to answer. I just want to look at numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and edit those and blank all of these. You might want to consolidate all of these into preferred not to answer or not available or a different variable, but I'm doing it this way. Okie dokie. So one last comb through. This looks fine. Okay. So now we're going to add the dollar sign back in. So we go back to the column, and we're going to go to Edit Cells, Transform, and under Expression, we're going to type open quotations, dollar sign, close quotations, leave a space, plus symbol, and go ahead and click OK. And let's take a look one more time to our text facet. And it added on the blank spaces a dollar sign. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take that out, click Apply, and now we have a standardized format. That looks okay. So in this last section, we are going to select only certain values. So suppose you want your final spreadsheet to only contain the GPAs of students with 3.9 and above. So first we're going to start by putting a text facet, and we're going to go ahead and star the values that we want. So this would be 3.9, 4, and 4.1. So click on 3.9 itself, go to All, under Edit Rows, Star Rows, and do the same thing for 4 and 4.1. Now let's get rid of the GPA text facet and go to all one more time, facet by star, and click on true. This will pull out only the GPAs that have been starred. So the next thing we want is that we only want students in our sample. So let's go ahead and click on position, text facet, and we can click on faculty. Once we click on faculty, we can go back to all, edit rows, and remove all matching rows. That will take out all the faculty members. You see that it's 0 here again. Click again on student, and faculty disappears. And let's go ahead and get rid of this facet. All right, our data set is ready to be exported. So now that we are done with cleaning our data, we're going to go ahead and export it out so that you can create a report in a different processor. So you have to keep the true selected and student selected. If you deselect true, for example, then you're back to all students with multiple GPAs. So let's select true, and let's go ahead and export it. As a comma-separated value, it comes up in Excel, and here you go. Only students, and only with GPAs of 3.9 and above. I hope this has helped. Please check out the rest of our series on our website. Thank you.